Okay, welcome everybody. So we are going to get, first of all, a great crowd. Really delighted that you all schlepped downtown for tonight's program. Friends, I got a lot to tell you, and I got a great story to share as well. It's one of those stories that is like amazing, but it's happened to all of us before, no doubt about it. I want to start first of all with a quick idea. We're going to take this idea, we're going to put it in the story, and then we're going to double click on that story and try to figure out what is going on in our own lives. Remember, this is a series on emunah. That's what we've been discussing and working on every single one of these topics that sadly, as I've mentioned before, is not discussed. Even in yeshiva, I grew up going to a very religious yeshiva, it's not something they talk about, having faith in God. They teach me Gemara, Mishnah, Chumash, but faith in God, it doesn't come up, which I find confusing and a little bit sad. You've got to kind of figure it out yourself. But we don't have the tools, we do not have the kelim to do that. So let's do that together as we've been doing over the past few weeks. Let's start with a beautiful idea, which I've said before, and it's all about Yaakov Avinu. Jacob Yaakov was running away from his twin brother, whose name was Esav. Esav wanted to kill him because he stole the bracha, although he didn't really steal it, because he bought it for a bowl of beans, the birthright, the bachor. But there was no rationalizing with Esav at that point. So Yaakov runs away. Where does he go? Anybody remember the story? He goes to, his Uncle Laban's house. On the way, he decides, hi, welcome, come in. Come take a seat. Good to see you. There's drinks at the back. I'm not alcoholic, I apologize. Oh, there is a beer back there. There's beer back there. So on the way, he decides to stop and to reflect on the journey. Where does he stop? Anybody remember? He stops at the future site of the Bet HaMikdash, Har HaMoriah, which was the place where his grandfather, Abraham, was ready to bring his son Yitzchak as a sacrifice. Sounds familiar? And what does he do? He falls asleep. He falls asleep on this mountain. And everyone knows what happens next. He sees a ladder, a sulam, Jacob's ladder. And the ladder has what on it? Anybody remember? Angels, malachim, olim, v'yordim. Angels going up and angels going down. And the commentators are very surprised by this. They're like, what do you mean angels going up and angels going down? This part, by the way, is not what I want to talk about, but it's very relevant to emunah as well. Why angels going up and down? Usually, says Rashi, that the commentators, angels should be going down and then up. Wrong way around, not up and down. And the commentators jump upon this idea and try to give their own answer. Rashi and others give the following answer. Does anyone know what the answer actually is, by the way? Why are the angels going up and down, not down and up? He sees a ladder in his dream, and the angels going up and down. Why are they going up and down?
For one descends, one has to ascend.
What?
For one descends from above, one has to ascend first.
Okay. That could be. Before you can come down, you've got to come up, but you would have thought the natural habitat of malachim are in the heavens. And these are the same angels, by the way. The answer is fascinating and needs an explanation. Check this out, it's very, very important. Says Rashi and other commentators, see what's going on? These were angels who were there to protect Yaakov Avinu. Everybody has protective angels that goes with them. And sometimes you see them, and sometimes you don't. We're going to make an assumption that Yaakov was aware that these angels are with him. And so the angels were leaving him. Why were they leaving him? Because he was about to leave Israel. He's about to leave Israel, Eretz Yisrael. And for some reason, and I don't know the answer to this question, I can guess it, there are different angels inside of Israel than outside of Israel. You have the Israeli angels, They're like, okay, yalla, let's go. Get in, hurry up, we got to go. You're leaving now. Like taxi drivers. Taxi drivers in Israel are different taxi drivers in America. You see, in America, the taxi drivers are very impatient. When you get to a light, and the light turns from red to green, you get a honk immediately. It's red, green, right? Red, green, and you know you gotta go because taxi driver's behind you. In Israel, it's different. When you get to a traffic light, the light is still red, and you get a honk from behind you from the taxi driver. And you turn around, you're like, why are you honking? It's still red. And he's like, it will be green soon. It's like a public assistance program of the taxi drivers in Israel. So we know the impatience in Israel. Taxi drivers are different. Drivers in general are different. But the angels are different as well. The angels that protect the land and the people in the land are different. That's not my topic, but it is fascinating and worth double-clicking on another time, which we will do. Because things that happen in Israel are not the same things that happen outside of Israel. Anyway, so these angels had to leave. They're the ones going up the ladder. Are you with me so far? So who are the ones who are coming down? The outside Israel angels, right? The French, the Russians, the English angels. They're going to come down because Yaakov was about to leave Israel because he's running away from his brother Esav, going to and live by his uncle Lavan. Are you with me? And that's the answer they give. Has anyone got any questions on that answer to the question? Has anyone got a question on that answer? There should be something glaringly obvious that should strike you when you hear that answer, which should be like, wait a minute, this doesn't make sense. I mean, there's a lot of parts, but there's one glaring question you should have, which is,
They're on the border of Israel.
they're not on the border of Israel. Where are they? In Israel. Actually, they're in the middle of Israel, in the belly button, Yerushalayim. And as far as I know, and I don't know everything, but this I do know, Yerushalayim is in Eretz Yisrael, in the epicenter. Says the Maharal of Prague and other commentators, why is there a change of guard while he's still in Yerushalayim and not a change of guard when he's on the actual border of Eretz Yisrael on our side? Does everyone hear that question? So we have a question, answer, and then another question presents itself. The answer to that question is going to be the topic of tonight's very short discussion. And the answer they give is something fascinating. You see, when Yaakov stood on that mountain and he woke up from that dream, he had a revelation that it was his time to leave, and these angels represented the future of the entire Jewish people. There are actually 4 angels on that ladder, each one representing the 4 galut, the 4 exiles the Jewish people would go through. Bavel. What comes after Bavel? Parasu Madai, Persian, the Median one, the Babylonian, Persian, and Median. Yavan, Greece, that's the whole Hanukkah story. And Rome, Edom, the long one, which we are still in. I'm not coming out of it right now, by the way. Probably came out of it 20 years ago, but it's another discussion, not for now. Those are the 4 angels representing the 4 exiles. So why exactly is he having this change of guard in the middle of Israel? No one reaches the border. And the answer to the commentators is unbelievable. And that is, wherever you are going, that's where you are. That's what they say. Wherever you're going, if you have a vision of where you want to be, and you have faith in the vision that you have, whether it comes to your own common sense, through advice, through friends, teachers, mentors, but you have a vision, like, that's what I want to be. That's who I want to be. That's where I want to be. Whatever it is. And you have that as a goal, as a target, even though you are nowhere near that point right now, it's as though you are there. Wherever your muhut, your essence, wants to take you, even though you're not there, you're there right now. There's actually halachot, Jewish laws, based upon this crucial principle. We call it machshava k'maaseh. which is your thought process allows you to attain something even if you didn't do it. And the classic example is a person wants to give tzedakah, and you really want to do it, and you got a coin in your pocket, and you're ready to go and give the tzedakah, and you see that ani, that poor person, walking down the street, and you start chasing them. Or you want to go help your friend do something, or you want to call your mother, or whatever it is, you want to do a Sunday mitzvah, and you're on your way, and you get prevented by circumstances outside of your control, but you really wanted to do it. You really wanted to do it. So the rabbis, machshava kamasa, since you wanted to do it, and you attempted, and you took a step, it's done. It's as though you're there. The desire to do something actually acts as if you do it and you get the mitzvah, even though you got the coin in your pocket still. Even though you didn't make the phone call because it was blocked for whatever reason. You didn't have cell service. Or whatever it is. It is a crucial principle of Jewish history and Jewish life. Okay? That's where we are so far. Okay. Let's take this crucial piece of information, which is true, and emet. The rabbis go out of the way to describe Yaakov's challenge in order to teach us this idea. That if you want to be somewhere, so although Yaakov was in the middle of Eretz Yisrael, once he had in his head, I'm out of here, once he had that in his head, he was no longer in the land of Israel. He was standing on the border about to leave. It's an incredible idea. But that's the way it works. I had an incredible story related to this idea. And I'm going to go to left field a little bit later. Just bear with me. There's a method to my madness. And believe me, I am mad. There's a beautiful story I just heard recently. I must share it with you. Such a great story. The story of a rabbi who lives in Tel Aviv. And he goes every Friday to a different community to give a shiur and answer their questions. And he gets there by taking a taxi, coincidentally enough. And so he gets into the taxi. And usually use that time to prepare his shiurim. Right? He's got the books with him, blah, 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 you know. And so he leaves, and the taxi driver has got the radio on loud. And it started to disturb him. And he says, I was about to tell him to turn it off, and then a guy's voice came on to the radio, and I said, just leave it. I want to just hear this guy, what he has to say. And a guy's voice gets on. And the guy says, I want to tell you, on the radio, I want to tell you a story that I witnessed myself. I witnessed the story myself. I was a young boy, and I used to live in, Yerushalayim. And while I was there, I used to go to the Bet Midrash and the Friday night tish, the Friday night table of a certain rabbi, Moshe Mordechai of Lelov. And let me tell you something amazing about this rabbi. I was once there as a teenager with my friends. And everyone was singing, and it was Friday night. A guy walks in who I'd never seen before. As he walked in, I saw the rabbi, who was sitting at the front of the table, motion over to this man who I'd never seen before, and I go, I'm there every Friday night. And he calls him over. And he whispers into this man's ear something, and the man runs out of the Beit Midrash as fast as legs will carry him. So me and my friends were young, and we wanted to know what that was about. We'd never seen him before. The rabbi just called him over, said something, and he ran out. So we chased after him. Right? Teenagers want to know what's cooking. And they see the man, he's running around, and I said, listen, hey, wait a second, what was that about? He goes, I gotta go home. He said, just give me 1 second. You gotta tell us, who are you? I've never seen you before. And the rabbi doesn't call people over and whisper. Why exactly are you running home? And what did he say to you? He says, I must tell you something. Because I have to get home, but I'm going to tell you since you asked. He says, every Friday night, I have a fight with my wife. I want to light the Shabbat candles on a shelf overlooking the table. and I set up the candles on that shelf. My wife doesn't have the candles there. She wants them on the Shabbat table. I don't like that. It causes problems, muksam, moving it. I don't like it there. Every Friday night I come home, she takes the candles off because she lights after I go to Bet Knesset synagogue, and she puts them on the table. I said to my wife, Erev Shabbat, if I see these candles on the Shabbat table, when I get home, no Kiddush and no Su'udah, I'm out of here. You're on your own. I came home, I look on the table, there they are, sitting there on the table, lit. I looked at my wife, I said, no Kiddush and no Shabbat Su'udah for me, I'm out of here. And I walked out, and I was furious. I was so angry. I was walking through the street, and I started hearing singing. I said, maybe the singing will calm me down. I walk into the Beit Midrash. This rabbi I've never met before calls me over, and he whispers into my ear, the Shabbat candles have one reason, which is more important than all other reasons. And that is to bring Shalom Bayit. It's the whole reason we light candles. I mean, practically speaking, so we don't bump into each other, but to bring light and spirituality to our Shabbat home. So the candles are so important. And he said those words to me. And I realized, oh my God, this guy is like a prophet. I'm going to get out of here, go home, and make peace with my wife. An incredible story. But not really relevant to today's discussion until we add the final piece. And the final piece goes like this. This rabbi from Tel Aviv is sitting in the cab and he hears this story. And it's like, wow, what a crazy story. I've never heard such a great story before. This Rabbi Moshe Mordechai Vlalov was a big tzaddik. He had Ruach HaKodesh. Who knows what happened over there? And we arrive at the destination. I get out and I give my usual class. At the end, a woman puts up her hand. She says, Rabbi, I have a question for you. Every Friday night, I get into a fight with my husband. Every Friday night. He wants the candles off the Shabbat table. I want the candles on the... It's a true story. I want the candles on the Shabbat table. And she's asked this question, and he's like... And she's like, is that such a weird question? And he's like, no, it's not. Funnily enough, I just heard this question. So she doesn't get the whole story. She didn't know what happened in the taxi cab. But she's like, well, what's the halakha? He's like, well, I'm not too sure. But I did just hear a story about a rabbi who passed away a number of years ago, Rabbi Moshe Mordechai of Lelov. And he said that you're going to have to work it out. But remember, the main reason for Shabbat candles is Shalom Bayit. That's the main reason. We bring light. Come in, guys. Take a seat. Let me shine. We bring light into our homes in order to bring shalom, to bring peace. And that's what we need to be doing. And that's the key thing. You need to remember this decision. I love that story because it involves Israeli taxi drivers, and I love stories about taxi drivers. Every rabbi loves stories about Israeli taxi drivers. But I'll tell you something else over here. I mentioned when I started that every one of us has a similar... It's happened to all of you, hasn't it? You just had a conversation or something, and then there's some form of synchronicity that comes up, and you're like, I was just talking about that. Or, I know it's happened to every female here, without doubt, and maybe some males as well. You're thinking of someone, and they call you right away. Come on. It's happened to you, right? Everyone. I'm going to refine this, not to be offensive. Every Sephardi woman who I've ever met has had, Rabbi, I was just thinking about you. I was saying, when the rabbi comes, it's hashgacha, and it happened, I'll just think. These things, as a people of emunah and people of bitachon, are not coincidence. And when these events happen to us, and little things, it just happens to hear a story, and someone asks you a question, we have to whoa, stop. I'm going to have to listen someone is sending me a message. There is a malach who I cannot see, but is right now around me and is guiding me in a certain way. That is an obligation that we have as Jewish people to see the hashgacha that comes with everything that happens to us. Part one. Let's go a little bit deeper into this idea. So stick with me, my friend. Any questions so far, by the way? By the way, I would love to hear your stories, and maybe at some point we'll get a chance, because I know every one of you has some story or something. Can I just share it? It just came to my head. You know me now. It comes to my head, I've got to say it. Not every hashgacha story, by the way, has to be one with a quote-unquote happy ending, right? Let me explain. I was counseling a girl a number of years ago who was in a relationship which, for reasons I'm not going to get into right now, was not the right relationship. Why? See me later. I'll give you a list of reasons. But I couldn't tell her, because you can't say, he's not for you, break up. You can't do that, right? You got to explain to people the challenges that will present themselves, whatever it was. I said to her, you know what, you need time in Israel. I said that time. You need to take some time off. You need to kind of it was the summer, she was a teacher, she had the summer off. I said, just go to Eretz Israel and I'll set you up and you go study a little bit, you travel, start with a birthright trip, and then she went, okay. I used to work for birthright, I got a good rate. Anyway, she goes, she calls me, it was early in the morning. And she calls my cell phone. Answers the phone, and she's like, Rabbi, you're not going to believe this. Listen to the hashgacha that happened to me. You may not like the story. I'm going to tell you the story though. And you can disagree with me if you want. What's hashgacha? You know my boyfriend Mike, that was his name. I fell in love with him, and I know it's not right, but I always felt there's a connection between us. And I was walking through Yerushalayim, and I couldn't get Mike out of my head. And I was walking around Yerushalayim, and I stopped somewhere, and I said, Hashem, I need a sign, I need a siman. Help me, Hashem. And I looked up, and in front of me was Mike's place. I said, this is a siman, this is a sign. This is my beshet, my zivug. And I had to call you straight away. You see, Rabbi? And I said, you're right. It's not a coincidence. It isn't a coincidence. It's hashgacha. And you have a very high level of emunah that you were able to see it. However, the hashgacha isn't that you need to be with this person. The hashgacha, the sign, the siman, can also be that this guy is still in my head. I've not given up on him, and I need to look at the signs that are presented themselves saying, I'm done. Everyone's looking for signs that it has to be a certain way. There's also signs that are telling us, this guy's still in your head. This guy's still got Mike's place in your brain. He's living in your head rent-free, as I say a lot when I counsel people. It's time to finish it off. I know we all aren't happy yet. It's the truth. By the way, as a side point, I'll come to you in a second. There's a lot of questions on this story, I know. People, while they're dating, with me, every story leads to dating, right? Everyone's looking for signs. They say, Rabbi, I met this guy. He's got the same last name as my cousin. We have the same kind of dog, and the names rhyme with each other. My psychiatrist knows his psychiatrist. Everything's perfect, right? I said, those things are okay to look at, but only in hindsight. When you're under the chuppah, then you can look back at all the coincidences that led you to that point. That's okay. You can't propel them forward to say this is a sign we need to be together. Are you seeing the difference? Okay. That's my thought and process on that. But either way, it's a strong form of emunah. I'm not belittling her in any way. She saw the sign, literally. It was like, boop, hello. And she was like, I need to understand the sign. But sometimes people misread the signs. Yeah, sorry.
On a practical level, how do you differentiate? Is that going to be still unclear? You asked my scientist to decide to
you don't. Many times the question is a fair question. How do you know? And the answer is you don't know. Many times you have no idea. You need to go outside of yourself and speak to someone who will give you an outside opinion. Because many times you are nogeh b'davar. You're too attached. And so it's unclear. For me, it wasn't even a question. This was a sign that she needs to get Mike out of her head, right, and clear her own little place. That was my thought. That was my opinion. And by the way, I was right. They broke up. Baruch Hashem. She's married now to not Mike. Let's put it that way. I want to add another piece over here. And I mentioned that I'll mention it this week, but you must have this amazing idea. We'll do a little bit of Kabbalah. You okay with a little bit of Kabbalah? I just read this piece today and opened a book that I actually teach from, a book that I put together, and there was an idea in there which I must share with you because it fits into this bitachon idea as well. Check this out. We spoke how when it comes to emunah bitachon, money is a big thing that we all are challenged with. I made money, I lost money. There's a lot that goes through our lives when it comes to this. Hi, welcome, come in. Hi, the seats over here, don't be shy, please, don't be shy. I know that feeling. I turn up late to a lot of things. I hate like standing there frozen, right? It's okay. Thank you for coming. Just don't sit in front of the camera. It's fine. So money, parnasah, is a big part of our emunah, our faith, lack of it, and you'll find it weird, also possession of it. Having money, a lot of money, can be a test itself. A test in the sayon. What are you going to do with it? How are you going to handle it? You know, there was a study they did in Israel. You can look it up. And by the way, I'm sure it's true in many countries. Every lottery winner in Israel, after they won the lottery, their lives were ruined. Ruined. Can you imagine that? Imagine living in Israel and you win like 10 million shekels. Right? Can you imagine that? Can you imagine how every family member, actually even every person who's not family, but suddenly their family is like, oh, how are you, uncle? Right? And want to get to know you a little bit. Every life is ruined by this. There's actually a woman in the 1980s actually who won the lottery, didn't know how to control the money, lost it all, spent it all on whatever, and then she wrote a book called Spend, Spend, Spend about how she won and lost the money, and then she became a millionaire again. So it was actually, true story. Anyway, so not having money is difficult, but even having a lot of money presents its own challenges. Having said that, I'll be honest with you, as Sting once said, you know Sting the singer? He's like, I was miserable poor, I'm miserable rich, better be miserable and rich. That's the honest truth, I'm not going to lie to you, but anyway, that's the...
Jordan Belfort.
Well, what?
Jordan Belfort.
That's probably where he got it from. I like to quote Sting, he's cool. Okay. There is a area of the Torah which is monetary laws. Mishpatim is what we call them. Right? There's a parasha called Mishpatim. Ve'ele Mishpatim asher tesim lefneihem, we're told. These are the laws you have to present to the Jewish people. So the list of laws in Parashat Mishpatim is contractual, legal, financial laws. The Zohar, which I saw inside, says something fascinating. Oh! Money laws is the secret of reincarnation. Gilgul Neshamot. What's he talking about? What's he saying? The commentators say something fascinating. They say that reincarnation is going to be one of the ways, according to Kabbalah, that we can understand why bad things happen to good people. Yeah. And number two, and maybe as importantly, to build our emunah and deal with people well. This is this fascinating idea. This is mind-blowing, okay? It's based upon, weirdly enough, a person called Eov, Job. Job, everyone heard of Eov? Eov is a character from Jewish history who actually was not Jewish. Most commentators say, actually one opinion the Gemara says it didn't even exist. It's a book that Moshe Rabbeinu wrote as a way for us to understand suffering. But Rashi and others say no, he was a real person and he lived at the time of Moshe Rabbeinu, Aaron and Miriam. And does anyone know where he lived?
Egypt.
No, interestingly, in Eretz Yisrael. And the Jewish people had to enter into Israel. But there was one tzaddik in whose merit, by the way, it's the whole talking of itself, in whose merit the Jewish people were pushed out and weren't able to enter. And that was Eov. He was such a righteous individual, a righteous Gentile, that in his merit, he could keep out Moshe, Aaron, Miriam, and all the Jewish people with the Torah. Imagine that. He must be a big guy, right? So, eventually, Hashem had to kill him because with him being alive, they wouldn't have merit to go in, which he did eventually, which is why we got in 40 years later. Anyway, the book of Eov is very difficult to understand, but I'll just summarize one little piece which is fascinating and relates to today's discussion. And it goes like this. We're going to pull this circle together. Just stick with me, my friends. Eov suffered greatly. The Satan came, the book of Eov tells us, and says to Hashem, he's a tzaddik because everything's going well for him. But if you just let me test him, if you let me challenge him, you'll see he will crumble and he'll be a nothing. And Hashem says, go right ahead. Reshut biyado. You want to go test him. And so he was tested with incredibly difficult trials and tribulations. Number one, his money was taken away. Number two, he lost his house. His wife and kids all died. He was left with terrible skin diseases and boils. He went from the highest high of society to the lowest low, that he ended up on a garbage heap with a piece of ceramic, something, pottery, scratching the sores on his arm. And his friends felt bad for him. So the whole book is basically about three of his friends. I think Bildad, Eliphaz, and Sophar, who came to him, who tried to console him. And this has become the classic book in trying to understanding why bad things happen to good people. And they challenge him. And they're pretty tough on him. And they're like, you know what? Maybe you deserve it. He goes, I didn't deserve it. I was good. I did nothing wrong. It doesn't make sense. And they're like, it cannot be. And so they argue with him. And then you see him arguing back. And they argue again. And he argues back. And he's not back. And he's getting more and more angry as the book continues. With him fighting them and them saying, obviously, you're not understanding how God works. He said, I know how God works. And I'm a good person. And I did not deserve this. It cannot be. Come. I did not deserve this. And like, you must have deserved it, because God doesn't do things without a reason, without a purpose. It makes no sense. And they're arguing backwards and forwards. And then this guy turns up out of the blue. Listen to this. And his name is Elihu. And Elihu turns up. And he starts to, if you look at the book, just be nicer to him. And like, I know you suffered a lot. And I know these three friends of yours really attacked you, and you attacked them back, got into this big fight. But maybe, and he starts to talk to him. And still he's resistant. And then Elihu says the famous words. Hen kol ele, everything that happened to you, yifal el pa'amayim shalosh im gever, is going to happen to you 2 or 3 times. That's the statement he makes. Everything happened to you 2 or 3 times. So, the Ramban says, what exactly did Elihu tell him? And it must be really important, because once he says those words, Eov keeps his mouth shut and doesn't argue anymore. So whatever those words were, which are, this happened to you 2 or 3 times, it must be they're really important. And says the Ramban, Nachman, not Maimonides, who doesn't talk about reincarnation, but Nachmanides says, this sentence is actually the answer to every question of emunah and bitachon that we have, which is, we don't understand. It must be from a previous life that you get to live 2 or 3 times, and possibly 200 times. Which means we have challenges and we have problems in our lives. And we try to understand them. And we should. And try to get the best out of all our challenges. There's one piece to this which fits into our conversation, which is, it could well be that we're never going to find the answer because we're fixing up a problem or a mistake we made in a previous life. That's what the Ramban says. And that's what Elihu told Eov. And Eov heard that, and he had no answer to that. He couldn't argue back. It is what it is. Says the Arizal, there's 3 reasons a person can be reincarnated. Listen carefully. It's going to fit into our discussion. Number 1, people missed out on mitzvot they could have done in a previous life. You had an opportunity to do a certain good act. You didn't do it. Your soul leaves this world, leaves your body, and Hashem says, you know what? You didn't get a chance to do the mitzvah, so I'm going to give you a chance, and you're going to go down and get a second chance, or a third chance. Right? Pa'amayim or shalosh im gever. That's possibility number 1. Possibility number 2 is that you made mistakes. And these mistakes, says the Arizal in his introduction to Shar HaGilgulim, the gate of reincarnation, these mistakes were such that you didn't fix them up or do teshuvah while you were alive. So Hashem says, I don't want to be a stain on your soul. So what I'm going to do is the following. I'll let you come back into this world and go through a challenge, go through a problem. And when you go through that problem, there'll be machaper that will wipe away your problems and mistakes from a previous life. Are you with it so far? So 2 out of 3. Number 1, you didn't do a mitzvah, which you could have done. Hashem says, no problem, I'll let you come down because you going to the next world. There's no mitzvot when your soul leaves the body. You are niftar, which is patur. Niftar means dead. Patur means you're no longer obligated to mitzvot. What are you going to do? Right? And so your soul leaves you. Go. Number 2 is you made a mistake in a previous life. And you didn't get a chance to be mechaper, that avon, that sin. And so what happens? I'm going to allow you to come back to this world, and you'll go through challenges and problems that will allow you to expiate, get rid of those. But he gives a third answer, by the way. Would anyone here like to guess the third possible reason the Arizal gives as to why a person goes through reincarnation and comes back into this world again?
For others.
Money related?
What?
Money related?
Money related, we're going to see, yeah. But that's not the main, that may be a part of it, yeah. It's definitely part of it, yeah. Yeah, it is part of it.
Tikkun, like to correct whatever they...
No, we did that, that was number 2. Tikkun was the mistakes you made, right? So you're right, but that was number 2. Anybody else?
Mistakes to fix from other people that they're not involved in.
The third answer is that a person has to come back into this world, says the Arizal. Check this out. Not for them. They're good. They're perfect. But there's other people who need their help. And so there are people walking around who actually fulfill their mission in a previous Gilgul, he says, in a previous incarnation, but they need to come back into this world because someone else who needs their help tell them to fulfill their mission. As I tell my wife, I am very annoying to you. I drive you crazy. It must be that I'm a tzaddik from a previous life. You must have been terrible. I'm here to help you fulfill your tikkun. And she says, shut up, you're an idiot. But you know what? It is what it is. But it makes sense, right? In a weird way, it makes sense, right? I'm here to help her fulfill her mission, and that's why I drive her crazy. I'm kidding. I'm madly in love with her. Yeah.
But, for that person to come, for that person to be fully
example, just take and come back to help someone else, he or she also puts himself or herself in a place of danger as well.
Yeah.
So is there extra help from Hashem in that? Like, you didn't raise your hand. Hashem is saying you need to go back to help someone, but at the same time, you might, I don't want to
mess up on the way here. By the way, there's even a discussion in the Gemara. I don't know the answer to your question. The question was, this guy or girl comes down, right? They're perfect, but in this world, we're all tempted with terrible stuff. We all succumb, right? And Adam B'li Chet, there's no one who doesn't have sin. So this person is,
what do I have to gain?
what do I have to gain? I'm like, I came down to help you, and I got dirty on the way down.
We're already here.
What?
We're already here.
No, he's saying, but the neshama is pure.
Up to us, so we're like.
But it's not fair. Like, I was good, I'm sitting there, and now I got to come down, and I got to deal with this. I don't know the answer to your question. I've thought about that question many times. I've been asked it before. I'm going to give you a couple of possible answers. One possible answer is, just living in this world is a kapara on a person. Just existing. By the way, even as a fetus, it's a tikkun. My wife, I haven't told the story publicly, I think I have it before, but I will now, because it came to my head, as you know. Between, I think my third or fourth kid, or fourth or fifth kid, my wife had a miscarriage. Miscarriages are very common among religious people because we have a lot of babies, Baruch Hashem, bli ayin hara. She had a miscarriage, difficult time, okay. I called my Rav, asked him a question. And I said, this is what happened. And he said, I'm not here to console you, but I obviously feel very bad for your wife and you went through. But believe me, just being in this world for a moment, even as a fetus, brings a tikkun to the neshama. And I felt very consoled by that personally. I'm not saying such a message would work out, but he was my rabbi. I went to him for some understanding of why we go through certain challenges, and he gave me that answer. So just being in this world is a tikkun. It's a kapara on the soul. Right? There's no doubt about that. Okay, I want to get to the final piece now. And it goes like this, and we'll tie this together and we'll finish. One more minute, we'll be done, but listen to this. And by the way, if you just hear this idea, it can change your life. I mean, really change your life. Check this out. Hi, welcome, come, don't worry. Hello, don't worry. A lot of people came late, don't worry. You know Says the one of the Sfarim, I have it in Hebrew if you want to see it. I took a picture on my phone if you want to see it afterwards. He says the following. Now remember, we're talking about Eov, reincarnation, and emunah bitachon, and things that happen to us, we have to accept. And one of the reasons why we accept them is because this idea of Gilgul Nishamat, because of previous lifetime. And he says, I want you to imagine that somebody takes $1 million from you. $1 million, okay? 2021, sorry. $10 million, $10 million, who needs that, right? $10 million. And they steal it from you in business, and now you're at 10 million. You're not happy. What do? You take him to the court of law, to Beit Din, and you go to the court of law, and you're sitting there, and you present the evidence as why he owes you 10 million. And you know he took this money from you. It's not even a question. But he sits there, and he doesn't want to pay. So what does he do? He brings a whole bunch of ideas saying, I owe him nothing. The jury goes out, or the Beit Din, wherever it is, and they're like, yeah, we looked at the evidence, he owes you nothing. You're done. You're acquitted. What's the obvious reaction you're going to have? Oh my God, what kind of world are we living in? You want me to have emunah? I did everything right. He took my $10 million. I went to a court of law. I went to Beit Din. I gave him the evidence. And look what they did. They took my money, and I know it's my money. I know. He says, when that happens to you, and it may not be 10 million, it may be 5 million, lo aleinu. It may be 50,000. It could be $10. He says, you should try to put into your head the following reality. That you too are not here for the first time. You've both been here before. And a previous life, he says, if you went through all the things you're meant, all the stages and steps you're meant to go through in order to retrieve your money and you didn't get it, he says, don't shoot the messenger. It must be that in the previous life, you stole 10 million from him, and you both needed to come back into this world. and you both needed to meet, and you both needed to get into a business deal, and you needed to borrow 10 million, and he took 10 million from you, and the business deal fell apart, and he needed to bring the Beit Din, and when he doesn't pay the 10 million, although you know it's your 10 million, you are rectifying a mistake from a previous life, and he was just brought in order to get his money back. So every single injustice could be readdressed and rebalanced. Now I read this a few years ago, and I thought to myself, wow, that's nuts. That means you can look at every interaction that you have, every injustice that's gone against you, and you don't just ignore it, you try to fix it, you try to talk to the person, get your money back, ask for an apology. You're meant to do that, and it's a mitzvah. But sometimes we all reach the end of the road, right? And there's nothing else we can do. We're stuck. What we need to do, and this is a part, it's not everything, but a part of our emunah and bitachon is to say, I don't know why this happened to me. I try to get the money back, or this friend back, or this job back, or whatever it is. It wasn't to be. It must be. I mean, can you imagine going through your life with this form of thinking? It must be that something happened in a previous life. I need to go through this. And once you do that, if you're able to do it, which is not easy, I'm not going to lie to you. I've tried it, it didn't work, but it could work for you, so I'm going to share it with you anyway. You may think to yourself, maybe I shouldn't be angry and take revenge and try to steal from this guy, or hurt him, or hurt his family, or other forms of nekama, revenge, which come to our heads and be like, it is b'shert. It's meant to be this way. And she was meant to marry that guy, and he was meant to have that business, and they're meant to have that house, and I had my eyes on that house so much, and I really wanted that house. By the way, God willing, you'll buy a house if you haven't already. Don't put your hopes into a house until you've signed the dotted line. Right? Do not fall in love with it, because you fall in love with the house before you buy it, you ain't going to get it in the end, right? Just word of warning. And you look at it and you go, oh, I want it so bad, and someone else steals it from you. Like, I'm going to hate you, I'm not going to talk to you again. You stole my... It must be that in the previous life, something happened, and I'm not going to have that house. It's a form of emunah. It's a form of bitachon. Let's bring this back for 1 second. We spoke about Yaakov Avinu at the beginning, those who are with us. And we said that Yaakov was on the mountain. And he was suffering greatly. Remember? His twin brother, who he bought the Bechor with a proper deal and a shtar, he signed it. And he's trying to kill him. And he has to leave his parents' house. And he has to go flee. He's a single guy, leaving a family, schlepping out of Israel. He probably was, and yet we're not told he was angry. We're not told he was upset. We're not told he was irritated. He was able to have a level of emunah bitachon that said, wherever I'm going, that's where I am. Which means I'm in the right place right now. That's the key of emunah. Whatever I'm going through, it's driving me crazy, annoying, money, family, dating. This is what I am meant to go through. Friends, if we could live just a few moments like that, it was worth our parents having us. Thank you for joining. Thank you for coming out to our downtown crib location. Hope to see you all next week. Take a break. There'll be some food in the back. Rabbi will be on in a moment. Thank you.